What nonsense did you believe for way too long before you found out it was made up? My parents told me that the little iriceptor, little glass bubble, on the living room TV was a tiny camera and that it would record me and my sister when they weren't home, and they would watch the tape to make sure we didn't lie to them about what we did. This was a throwaway line my mom said once to get my sister to confess to something they knew she did. She was 5 and I was 7, and I believed that crap until I was 18. I knew how televisions worked and I knew how remote controls worked, but for some reason I never put 2 and 2 together until I was getting ready to move out for college, and I asked my parents, "Hey, where did you get that old TV that had a camera in it? Can I have that for my dorm to make sure my roommate doesn't mess with my stuff?" I'm still feeling the residual embarrassment of that a decade and a half later. That my dad was sleeping on the sofa because of his bad back. Up until I was 18 I thought that when a man had a vasectomy that his testicles were removed completely, and I always thought to myself there must be a better way. I, born 1982, believe that my Gamma Boy needs to rest after playing on it, since it gets tired just like a person. Clever parenting, in hindsight. When I was a kid, my mom had this old car with a turn-knob dial for the radio. She told me it only got old as radio stations because it was so old. When they gave that car to my brother, he immediately ripped the radio out and put in a new sound system. I always assumed he just wanted the new radio stations. Then I was in college riding in a friend's old Beta car and we were listening to a top 40 type radio station, and I was like, holy crap, how is your car able to get modern radio stations? MAGA. My older cousin told me that U-Haul trucks were always full of whatever the picture on the side of the truck was. This made sense to me. Coke trucks were full of Coke. Walmart trucks were full of Walmart stuff. So why wouldn't the truck with a submarine on the side be full of submarines? I was 8 or 9 when I asked my mom how they got dinosaurs into a truck if they were all extinct. I think she actually took my temperature after that question. One person told me that if I ever eat oysters I would have to chew on them, otherwise they would stay alive and grab my esophagus. Another person told me that if I did, it would release gastric liquid into my mouth and dissolve my tongue. I don't eat oysters. I thought President Andrew Jackson was black because his last name was Jackson and everyone with the same last name must be related. So surely he was black because the Jackson 5 were all black. I learned differently in about 4th grade when the teacher couldn't stop laughing when I explained why the picture of Andrew Jackson was wrong in our book. I used to think that doctors and nurses were just gender variants of the same job. I guess it's not. Every extra time you press the button at the lights to cross the road it resets a timer and you have to wait longer to cross. My dad told my sister that the bumps in the road, lane dividers, are road braille for blind people who drive. She believed well into adulthood that speed bumps were actually the resting place of the deceased, and basically they'd lay some bodies down, pave over them, and you had a speed bump. I was a naive kid, and my uncle was his jerk. Bonsai Cats. I found a website when I was in college that advertised cats put into glass jars and left there to grow into the shape of the jar, with a hole for waste and a hole for their mouths in the special jars. I was horrified and showed some friends who were also horrified. Months later a friend of mine was like, "Wow, you really got us with that website. Sappy. Hahaha. I thought it was real." "Oh, yeah. Haha. Of course it is not real, and I was enacting fun japery," said I. Ha. Ha. I'm an idiot. I was told when I was a child that blood wasn't replenishable, so anytime I got a cut or slice I would band-aid up for days, thinking about how I'm probably still about 98% full of blood and how long I can make it last. My pet rabbit went to a new home at the farm. I was at university when I discovered it was a lie. That I was adopted. The story went that they found me in a basket in the river. I knew that was BS because it matches the Moses story too much. I just assumed I had been kidnapped. Wasn't till I was about 10 that I realized it was all made up and I was actually my parents' biological kid. Don't use paper bags. Use plastic. Save a tree in the rainforest. My school taught that nonsense for Earth Day. Then I have learned of tree farms. Then we learned paper decomposes far faster. Then we learned plastic is far worse in every way. As a kid watching Shrek, seeing Puss in Boots get in trouble for having catnip on him, I always just assumed cat owners had to go to some pet black market to get a hold of the crap. I didn't find out catnip was not an illegal substance until I was 23 years old. When I was younger, my dad told me that horses were called cows and that cows are called horses. I went by this terminology until 3rd grade, where I got into a heated argument with one of my teachers which led to my first and only school suspension. Thanks, Dad. My friend and I found several legit looking videos on YouTube years ago that showed evidence of mermaids being real. I spent an entire week passionately defending the existence of mermaids to my whole family and people I work with. That porcupines shoot their quills. Also, that the blood in your veins is blue until exposed to oxygen. Thought that dogs were sprayed rather than spayed, and that there was a special castrating spray you could buy. Raised this once to my girlfriend with the worry that someone could get this and use it on people, and she proceeded to laugh until she almost vomited. I was doing a master's degree. That rivers flow from north to south, and not otherwise. I believed that I fit in with the cool kids. It took me way too long to realize that I was embarrassing myself with them for trying to fit in. If you eat pumpkin seeds, a pumpkin will start growing in your stomach. That there's chemicals added to pools that will indicate when someone has peed by showing a red ring around them. It never prevented me from peeing in the pool, but I'd always swim away from where I peed, hoping to outswim that red ring. When it never appeared, I just assumed the pools I swam in didn't have the red ring chemical, but then found out it's just a bullcrap story parents tell kids to keep them from peeing in the pool, which didn't even work with stubborn, nasty me anyway. When I was 3 or 4, my cousin told me cotton candy was made out of spider webs. I'm in my 30s now. I know it's not spider webs, but I still can't bring myself to eat it. When I was a kid, one of my friends told me that black people pooped white, since white people pooped brown. It didn't help either that all my black friends went along with it. That you can't drive at night with the reading light on in your car. That cockroaches could survive a nuclear war. I thought it meant any one roach was nuclear resistant. They're way more scary that way. When I was in middle school, my dad convinced me to raise my legs when crossing over train tracks for good luck on your next date. Eventually decided it was BS when I didn't score any dates. Up until 8th grade, I pronounced volleyball as volleyball. Yep. When I was a kid, my parents led me to believe that one Skittles commercial where they plant the Skittles and it grew a rainbow could actually happen. For about a month or 2 I had my little Skittles patch in the backyard that I watered daily, hoping it would grow, before I discovered my parents were just fricking with me. That a raise/promotion was on its way, and all I had to do was be patient along with thinking of more ways to help out some more. My supervisors led me to believe that the raise/promotion was coming for nearly 6 months. But towards the end of that time I got tired of waiting and decided to quit. There were many reasons as to why I left that job, but being underpaid and overworked was one of the main reasons I quit. It wasn't until 6 months after I left that job that a former co-worker told me that it was all made up and our supervisor was just trying to get everyone to do more work so it'd look as if he were a good leader/supervisor. It still pisses me off to this day, but at this point there's nothing I can do about it. When I was a child I believed that the term soap opera referred to when people sing in the shower. Politicians had our best interests at heart because we elected them. Rather than find out something is fake, I found out something is real. I found out recently that Joan of Arc was a real person. I always assumed she was a fictional character from a book or something. Climate changed any year. I was like 18 before I realized it wasn't some hippie conspiracy. As an ecologist, I don't know how I would explain some of the patterns I see on macroecological scales without it. Also, my mom told me a black line appeared on my forehead when I lied. I didn't believe it until she pointed it out, and I went to the mirror. She'd managed to draw it on without me noticing. scared the crap out of me. It took several years of critical analysis and observation before I realized it was made up. That we only use 10% of our brain. Also, sloth having the capacity to run fast, but chooses not to. That I was more intelligent and mature than my classmates. I wanted to believe that I alone was the only one interested in learning and furthering my education, even when it was ass-bleedingly obvious that was not the case, because I wanted to feel like I was this paragon of wisdom without actually working. Deep down I knew that wasn't and never would be the case, but I shut that voice up because I didn't want to admit that I was actually a piece of crap, but I was. And only after doing incredibly mediocrely on the final exams and walking away from graduation not feeling as though I wasn't really friends with anyone did I really come to terms with the fact I've been an awful human being and a raging narcissist. Led to an awful lot of self-reflection after that. I don't ever want to be that person again. Medieval times never happened. Nobody told me that they didn't. I just thought that since dragons were fictional so was everything else. 4th grade blew my mind. We had pet rabbits in our backyard when I was about 6, 7, and it was mine and my younger sister's 5, 6 job to help with the rabbits. We would even spend hours picking clovers for them and carefully taking them out one at a time to let them hop around the yard. But our rabbits kept escaping at night when we were asleep, one at a time, never to be seen again. My sister and I were mystified. We had trouble with the locks. How did the rabbits possibly escape? Before winter, a whole lot of them escaped, and according to my mom, the dogs spooked them, and we'd never see them again. Cut to my being 16. On the phone with you get sister and he get on the subject of our beloved shared rabbit, Marbline. Hey Ma, whatever happened to Marbline? Did she take part in the great rabbit escape? She made great stew. We ate my pet rabbit. We ate all the rabbits. They escaped. Yup, right into our freezer. Cheaper than chicken. Sister and I were traumatized. I grew up in a tea drinking family. I would often drink tea with lots of sugar, and I would often leave a teaspoon in the cup while I drank. People would say, watch out, you'll go blind from that. And I would be like, nah, man. Ain't no one I ever heard of gone blind from drinking too much tea. When I turned 18, 19 it dawned on me, they meant that the teaspoon would someday poke me in the eye. Until I was in 5th grade I thought you could get pregnant from French kissing. It was very traumatic when a boy French kissed me at the roller rink and I had to go home and tell my mom, I think I'm pregnant, lol. I thought dogs and cats were the same species, with dogs being male and cats being female. Not me. But I one time told my ex-wife that my little brother was Samoan. My brother is about 6 inches taller than me and weighs probably an extra 100 lbs. He carries it well and just looks like a sturdy person. He's very dark complected. It's strange because the rest of our family has pasty skin and light hair. His hair is black. In a hoe. I told her this one day just joking around. My brother and I have the same parents. It made no sense that he would be Samoan. 2 years later, she told a guest at our Thanksgiving that my brother was Samoan. The room fell silent, and she was dead serious. It wasn't the reason for the divorce, but she's not the smartest cookie, still to this day. That what guys want is a free-spirited, independent girl who is super into sex, all types, all the time, and not into asking for commitment. I thought that this was the ideal woman so many men were looking for, and being her would make guys fall in love with me right and left, and shower me with praise about how amazing I was, and how they didn't think women like me existed. And to think, I wondered why I was always the freck buddy and never the girlfriend. Second thought Africa was one big country until I was 12 or 13. Santa Claus. I always thought he was suspect, because he'd buy me the off-brand of whatever toy I wanted that year, so I wasn't that big of a fan, but was quite surprised to realize it was my parents. I thought the wedding kiss was what got the woman pregnant, like, not just any kiss, but only the one where the minister says you may now kiss the bride. I didn't think about the fact that people have multiple children, multiple years apart. When I was a little girl, My dad always told me that the artificial Christmas tree he just put up needed 24 hours for the branches to settle before we could decorate it. Me, being the naive little kid that I was, believed this and excitedly waited for the next evening to arrive so we could hang all the decorations on it, year after year after year. Fast forward to me being 20, moving out into my first apartment, with a friend of mine as a roommate. Our first Christmas in the apartment comes, and I set up my newly acquired artificial tree. My roommate goes to grab all the decorations and I tell her no, we have to let the branches settle tonight. We can decorate it tomorrow. Cue her laughter as she explains to me that the branches only need to settle on real trees. Internally I think, no, that can't be right. My dad told me this, and he wouldn't lead me astray. But also, maybe she's onto something. I mean, the branches are all bendy and crap. I proceed to question my dad about this while I'm at a family dinner a short time after, only to have the whole family respond with laughter. Full belly laughs at my youthful naivety and gullibility. My dad sheepishly proceeds to tell me that my roommate is indeed correct, and he had just told me that because he was always so tired of placing branches and stringing the lights when he'd put the tree up, that telling me this was just his way of delaying part 2 of the great Christmas tree decorating festivities. He was rightfully floored and amused that I had believed him, and still did at the wise old age of 20. I'm 37 now. Still haven't lived this one down. That whole idea that daddy long legs and sex are ridiculously poisonous, but they just can't bite you because their mouths are too small. That my dad took my childhood dog so she could become a police canine. Totally true. The only lie about it is that she did not make police chief that year. I was always told if I swallowed my gum it would not digest and get stuck in my intestines forever. Okay, this is really embarrassing, but I was probably 12 years old when I realized men didn't have one less rib than women. My parents didn't go to church, but I always wanted to go with my neighbors, and I don't understand why the church would tell the creation story without clarifying that men and women have the same amount of ribs. For reasons unknown, I believed apprentice was pronounced apprentice for the longest time. I used to think the presidential race was a physical race, and I never understood why each party always chose old guys to run it. My dad used to hock luggage out the car window all the time and he didn't want me to spit all the time, so he always said he was spitting ice cubes out the window. It took me until I was like 15 to think, where the frick is he getting an ice cube from? One day when I was about 5, my mom was wearing a green mud mask facial cleaner. It was cracked and scaly. Me, what's on your face? Huh, what do you mean? Me, that green stuff. Huh, oh, that is my face. Me, no it's not. Huh, son, you might as well know. We are lizard people. When you turn 10, your human skin will fall off, and you will show your true form. Don't worry, we'll give you a human face to wear. Me. There was a guy in my 10th grade gym class that thought girls peed out of their butts. Always the chance he was joking, but he seemed pretty serious at the time. I believed my parents were responsible people until pretty recently. It's a sobering, sad moment when you realize your parents are just people. They can be royally stupid and petty and irresponsible. You just don't notice as much when you're younger. My dad and my mom are both freaking terrible with money and their social lives. My mom told me that her friend saw a ghost on her computer because she was on it after 11 PM. Took me until college started to realize she just didn't want us playing computer games till that late. I learned yesterday that Donald Glover and Childish Gambino are the same person. Trickle down economics. I found out this year, I'm 25, that Turkish delight isn't made of crushed ladybugs, and that my dad had made it up. Legit thought it was disgusting that people ate it and couldn't understand it. Not me but my sister. When she was about 3 I told her that Prince is the most beautiful girl in the world song was written about me. She didn't question it and believed it for years. She even told her friends at school. I also told her that our granddad was a world champion belly dancer and catwalk model in his youth, which she believed for an embarrassingly long time. Additionally, I told my brother when we were much younger that our black cat was a witch's familiar. and that whenever she went out to do cat stuff she was actually visiting her witch. I told him that if he was mean to me, the cat would put a curse on him, and subsequently he was terrified of her for years. I do feel a bit bad about that one, but it did get me the control of the remote a lot, and I got to watch a lot of Powerpuff Girls. That thunder was clouds crashing together. I was looking in every atlas for Kokomo. It was nowhere near Aruba, Jamaica or Bermuda and Bahamas. There's one in Indiana though. I thought smoking a bowl involved putting your weed in a cereal bowl or something, lighting it on fire, and then inhaling the smoke that way like in some kind of ancient Native American ceremony. I heard someone say this once back in middle school, and it made sense to my naive 12-year-old mind. Snipes are not real. Thanks mom and dad for the most embarrassing camping trip or trips ever. Chiropractors. I always thought they were a legit medical field. Actually they just make crap up. That millennials fricked everything up. I soon realized that I had only just graduated college, and that neither me nor my peers were actually making policy or in charge of anything. CrossFit is good for you. Nope. You're actually setting yourself up for an injury. I thought a woman's vag was basically where my peen started. So if there was a movie scene where they were at it doggy style, all I could think about was all that poop that guy was getting on his sklaan. 11 years later, it's my favorite position, and I don't get any poop on my sklaan because my boyfriend douches his ass before I smash. If you make a face and someone slaps you on the back hard enough, your face will stay like that. Wasn't too long I believed, but I did for a short period. You can't eat salty foods and sweet foods at the same time, or it will cause indigestion. This was a lie my mother's grandma told my mom to get her to stop drinking sweetened milk with dinner, and my mom passed it on to me for no reason at all. My family also believes in traditional Chinese medicine ideas, so I just figured it was one of those things and never questioned this one specifically. I didn't learn it was completely made up until my mom accidentally told me. When I was young, 10-ish, I used the word extraordinary in front of my aunt, and she corrected me saying that because it is literally extraordinary it is used to describe something that is extremely regular/average. We argued for 10 minutes before I finally caved because she was the adult. After all, I freaking used it like that for 3 months before someone pointed it out. Frick you, Aunt Sally. That there is some kind of intelligent design or blueprint to evolution. The strange thing is that it wasn't for any kind of religious reason that I thought this, but everything just seemed too perfect for organisms to develop these traits randomly. It was a combination of only having a superficial knowledge of the subject matter and typically obnoxious youthful contrarianism and arrogance. Once I gained actual knowledge of evolutionary biology and a deeper and wider understanding of how the universe works, I quickly realized that I random teenager hadn't overthrown the field of evolutionary biology, which is a body of knowledge that has been rigorously tried and tested over the last 150 years. For years I believed that the Smurfs were banned from American TV during the 80s and 90s because they were too communist. My dad mentioned it as a joke and 9-year-old me took it seriously. For 10 freaking years, I believed this until I brought it up in conversation one day with him. He still hasn't let me live it down. I thought girls' nipples made a sound when you touch them. When I was a kid, our parents were desperate to get us to eat kidney beans. So they told us they were actually Santa Claus beans, because Santa Claus and his elves ate them at the North Pole. I forgot the story behind it, and just believed they were nicknamed Santa Claus beans. Figured it out when I asked for Santa Claus beans in my burrito bowl at Chipotle. That the multiple shots of ouzo and whiskey my grandfather took throughout the day was his medicine. I got a good number of Pokemon booster packs for Christmas. One of them just happened to have an original Charizard card in it. I believed in Santa for a good few years longer than I ought to have. I mean, statistical unlikeliness has always suggested that a higher power is the only way, right? /s. The Mormon Church. WWF. Well, that it wasn't scripted anyway. Scratching poison ivy rashes will cause it to spread. The reality is that most people are only allergic to the oil on the plant. So once that oil gets on you, you'll develop a couple rashes. If the oil gets on your clothes, you can further infect yourself. The belief was spread by the fact that poison ivy would typically appear in one place and then crop up in another place later. So the thinking was you scratched it, you spread it. But that's kind of just what poison ivy does. It spreads in stages. There's nothing inside those blisters on your skin other than, well, blister fluid. It's not contagious. That said, the myth has likely endured because it keeps kids from rending up their own flesh, which helps keep them safe from infections settling in. But if you're an adult and you got some poison ivy, yeah, give it some scratches in moderation. Won't hurt you. Or you can get a hairdryer and turn it on. Hold it a few inches above the irritated skin and run the air back and forth over the outbreak, which simulates a warm scratching sensation. Use that a lot. When I had a particularly severe outbreak, someone burned poison ivy and the wind shifted, and I got a full body dose of the smoke. On average, humans eat 8 spiders a year in their sleep. Up until I was like 8 or 9 I wouldn't eat anything but chicken, so my parents told me everything I ate was chicken, and I never doubted them for a second. When I was really young, 5, 7 or so, I asked what the bumps on the highway are for. My dad told me in a matter-of-fact tone that they are there so that blind people know when they are drifting out of their lane. I didn't give it a second thought and repeated the fact to classmates and teachers who laughed thinking I was joking. I wasn't corrected until I was in my early teens. That yogurt didn't have to be microwaved to be consumed. Also that snakes weren't just overgrown slugs. That driving at night with one of the interior cabin lights on is illegal and will get you arrested. It's not. Right. Thought I have since I was 12 years old and up to 25. Have no doubts about it. At 25 fall in love for the first time in my life. The girl was quite into me too, but having in mind my problem I rejected her. That feels so bad that I finally went to urologist. The visit lasted 2 minutes. Literally, the doctor said that I'm completely normal and just wasting his time. I'd been laughing all evening. That's it. I declined sex for 13 years in a row for made up reason. For the longest time I believed that glass is a slow flowing liquid. That the kids on Jungle Run would be locked in the temple forever, never seeing their parents again. If your Pokemon team completely die, you lose and need to start a new game. After 2 badges I lost my first time and was running to mum somehow save the situation X. With tears in my eyes I was happy that I was set back in center. I think I was 8 years old at this time. Up until I was 15 I thought 69 was just another word for sex.